I'm Corbett Wall with DVAuction, here with your feeder flash for Monday, January the 29th, brought to you in part by Macrocin by Bimeda. Macrocin is a telithromycin injection, really a generic Draxin. And if you would like to see how Macrocin stands up to Draxin in a big trial, go to macrocin.com. I think you'll be impressed. Also, Joplin Regional Stockyards, 7,500 for the regular Monday feeder cattle auction here today. I talked to Catfish there, and he said thought they'd have about 30 straight loads of yearlings, and then acres and acres of long-time weaned calves, feeding type calves or stockers, whatever you would like to do with them if you got a place to put them. But be a lot of those. Big sale there. And continue to pray for Bailey Moore. I talked to Jackie there over the weekend, and he said they're getting care from a Mayo Clinic there in Arizona, and hoping for the best. So they need all the help they can get there, guys. Your cattle market stretches its legs last week. Really the first big week of trade we've had, with all of our markets open and pretty decent negotiated fed cattle movement. The board was open all week. First big week we've had of this new year, and it was very impressive. Your board was up big. Your live cattle contracts gained over $4 nearby. Your feeder cattle contracts, of course, the January was coming to fruit, so it was just kind of trying to line up with your CME cash feeder cattle index. But your farther outs, and then the next out is March, gained almost $8. So that's a big gain there to see on your feeder cattle futures. Your cash fed cattle, we moved not a big movement, but close to 100,000 by the time we get Friday's sales added up there, which is a lot better than what we did there through the holidays and through the blizzard weeks there. But we gained ground there. Gained a couple of dollars in your live sales of fed cattle cash, and dress sales $3. So big gains there. And then on your cash feeder cattle sales, $2 to $10 higher on all classes, and a lot of them more sharply higher than that. So just a great week. And now we're looking at this week coming up, and we've got something that's going to completely change this industry. I mean, completely change it. And I think it's something that was kind of tried to be snuck in there. I mentioned it fairly early in the week last week, and had a lot of big players come out and say, whoa, I didn't realize we were getting to that point. But we are. So this week, NCBA, National Corporate Beef Association, is going to have a policy vote on mandatory electronic ID tags. That means everybody that raises cattle is going to have to put them in. Everybody. If everybody doesn't do it, there's no use in doing it. Which everybody's not going to do it, so there's no use in doing it. But they're hiding it, calling it a disease tracking device or a method to do that. You know, we haven't had any big diseases, and God, I hope we don't. I told you it wasn't past the deep state of the cattle industry to have a scare of one here, as we're starting to talk about EID tags and things like that. So keep your eyes open for that. But this deal is going to change everything. Everybody's going to have those buttons in their ears to market their cattle. They're supposed to have them in there before they leave their place. You know, people don't have the facilities to do it, don't have the know-how, don't have the want to. But, you know, let your association, if you're a member of a grassroots, maybe a county association, tri-county association, and you're an affiliate of a state cattlemen's group, call and let those people know how you feel, and then make them tell you how they're planning to vote on Thursday of this week. How are you going to vote on that? Well, it's going to go through anyway, so we're just going to go ahead and vote on it too the right way. What's the point in even being head of an organization if you're just going to vote for something because you know it's going to go on through anyway, not because the members of your organization are for it. If the members of your organization are for it, it's a democratic association. You should take a tally of your membership and vote the way they want to, because you're their voice when you go to those deals. It's not just for going out to eating on their dime and drinking and walking around in your fancy sport coat. You should be thinking about what your makeup of your association wants to do. And I'm talking about Texas and Southwestern Cattle Raisers Association. Now that is the group in Texas that is supposed to speak for cattle producers. We got Texas Cattle Feeders Association. We know that they're speaking for cattle feeders. Cattle feeders are fine with this because they don't have to do anything. Now they're going to have to read those when they come in, going to have to get set up for that. But it's not going to change their life. The way that they do things, you know, it's not a bad deal for cattle feeders, packers, or seed stock guys. The way it's going to change the life of is your cow-calf producers, your backgrounders, your order buyers, and your sale barns for the most part. And I like to speak for the sale barns when they have good markets, and I'm speaking for them now. I have talked to many sale barn operators, and there is not one that wants this. I actually had one tell me, he said, well, I guess if they got to do this, I'm going to charge the hell out of them to do it. And they're going to have to bring cattle in 3 days early, and then I'm going to charge them for feed. I won't mention who that is, but nobody else wants to do it. And I mentioned I was talking to Jackie Moore there at Joplin Regional Stockyards. He says, I had 14,000 the other week. Can you imagine how many of them I'd have to put tags in if this deal has gone through? Probably 4,000 or 5,000. He said it's not doable. I don't have the time to do it. I don't have the help to do it. I ain't going to do it. And a lot of other ones said, I ain't doing it either. And then now they're saying that they may set up a deal where they fine the sale barns. Why is it the sale barns' onus to make sure it's done anyway? It's just a place, just like gathering the $1 a head checkoff. You can force the sale barns to collect it, and then don't give the sale barns anything for doing it, and then you fine them if they don't do it right. I don't understand why the stockyards have to be responsible for all this crap. And that's what they're saying too. But it's just easy for a group like NCBA, and they're doing this for USDA. And NCBA can't make laws. They're just having policy that's basically asking USDA to put forth rules and make it on all cattle by 2026, less than 2 years from now. I don't know. Anybody that really knows how the cattle system works, how many small producers there are, especially across the southeast, and that they're not going to be able to do it. You know, I've mentioned the 80-year-old producer that doesn't have any facilities. He knows that he's selling mismanaged cattle. You're not telling him anything he doesn't know. He knows that it would be better if his bulls were cut. He knows that his cattle would sell better if they'd been a long time weaned. He knows that they would be better off if he could give them 2 rounds of shots. He doesn't have the ability, he doesn't have the help, he doesn't have the facilities to do that, and he don't have the help, facilities, and want to do this tagging deal. And it ain't going to happen. They're just not going to. And that does not mean that he shouldn't be able to raise cattle. He's got some ground out there. He's had cattle out there all of his life. And he wants to be able to keep doing this. I've also talked to a lot of guys that said they've talked to their older producers, and they said, you know, they pushed us and pushed us and pushed us. And if they push this through, I'm just going to give up. Well, your small producers are your bread and butter for sale barns. They can't operate without the small producers. What about these drug companies? They sell drugs to these smaller producers. The big corporate feeders and the big corporate backgrounders and outfits like that, they bargain with the head honcho for the best deal on the drugs. And so, you know, it's everything, guys. It's top to bottom cattle industry. This industry needs the small producers. They've got a right to do this. They shouldn't be forced out for this deal. And I'm like everybody else. I'm certain that they're going to cram it, like I said, down our throat or up our ass, whichever one you would like to go with on Thursday. They're going to make policy for that, and then once they make the policy, USDA will come out with some kind of statement that says the cattlemen have spoken. And it ain't the real cattlemen. It's the guys, the corporates that run that outfit. And it ain't gonna change their life, and they don't really care about the small producers. They just like to abuse them. But I tell you what, you just think about all the different ramifications of this. Who's going to be privy to that information? Are they going to keep it private? Are they going to put extra things on there? Who's going to know? Who's going to go? Who can go in there and check and see how many heads you got and all that kind of thing? Make sure you got your location ID on there, right? Who's going to get to do that? Is it going to be government people? Is it going to be those that get to fine you for carbon credits at some point down the road? I just don't know if we need this or not, guys. And I'm telling you what, for those producers that have been aging and sourcing their cattle and putting them in programs and putting the EID tags in their ears and been getting a premium for it, no more premium. Those premiums are gone. So just think about that, people, as you go forth. But here at DVAuction, we continue to grow our broadcast barns, and we've got lots of them. And we're growing, almost every week or every other week we're adding a new one. We just added a new one, and it's Central Ozark Stockyards in Squires, Missouri. That is way down south central Missouri, south of Ava, Missouri there. They sell on Mondays. Nice facility there. They were ready to get broadcast on DVAuction for viewing and bidding eventually there too. So we welcome them to our family of broadcast barns. Really tickled to have them. And if you have a sale barn and you would like to have DVAuction broadcast it, or if you're broadcasting with someone else and you'd like to add DVAuction broadcasting, we'd be glad to do it. There's some travel and fees for the equipment to set up. After that, it's $350 a month. That's pretty cheap for as much good as you're going to get out of it. Another one of our broadcast barns is Dublin Livestock in Dublin, Texas, and they had a special sale over the weekend there. And I tell you what, Tanner Monk has bought that facility there in the not too far past. It's been fairly recent that he bought that. Young guy, very aggressive, wants to do big things there. He had an Angus influence sale there. And you guys that are in Central Texas and you're always saying, well, I can't get those big prices for my cattle and all that kind of thing. If you do the stuff that the guys in the Sandhills in Nebraska do, or in the Midwest or wherever they're at, if you do those things, you can get it. So he had an Angus influence sale, had some big strings that come through there. These were not commingled cattle. These were just bigger strings off some big producers there. The cattle had to be 100 days weaned, 2 rounds of shots there, and check out some of these prices. 86 steers weigh 567 and bring 310.50 in Dublin, Texas. 75 steers weigh 649 and bring 291. 76 steers weigh 665 and bring 285 and a half. And 70 steers, feeding type steers, weigh 748. Dublin Livestock in Dublin, Texas, and they bring 249.50. Now that's as impressive as anywhere, guys, and it happened right there. You put some groups together, try to make loads or close to out of them, put all the value to them, find you somebody that wants to feature those cattle like Tanner Monk does at Dublin Livestock, and there's several other sales that are getting progressive there in Central Texas and even over in eastern part of Texas there that want to do that. They want to advertise them, get the buyers in there for that, and it's fantastic when they do it. So congratulations to Dublin Livestock right there. Let's talk about your board. How about February live cattle futures for last week? Monday was down 60, Tuesday was up 87, Wednesday up 70, Thursday up 237, Friday up 72 cents, with February live cattle ending the week at 178.45, up 408 for the week. April ended the week at 181.67, up $4.30 for the week. January feeder cattle, which I don't know why I'm talking about them, they went off the board at the end of the week, but still, here's what happened. Monday they were down 27 cents, Tuesday up 117, Wednesday up 82, Thursday up 20, and Friday up 35 cents, and now they've gone off the board right there in line with your CME cash feeder cattle index like they always do. It's cash settlement. That was 230.206, and that's what our latest CME was. On the cash feeder cattle index, so they always come together. But that was up $1.96 for the week. But then getting out into your next nearby months, March ended the week at 239.70, up 7.75 for the week. Wow. April ended the week at 245.60. Your grains, corn was 3/4 of a cent higher a bushel for the week at 446 1/4. March beans was down 4 cents for the week, ending the week at 1209 1/4. Kansas City hard red winter wheat for March gained 16 3/4 cents a bushel last week, ending the week at 624 3/4. Your fat cattle trade up through Thursday, 65,000 traded, negotiated. Now that's not a big negotiation, but it's so much bigger than what we've had so far this year that we're glad to have that. Cash prices live, fat steers and heifers sold from 173 to 178 in the 5 area. That was 2 to 250 higher than last week. But the weighted average was kind of interesting. Your weighted average on live steers in the 5 area was 175.39. That was actually $1.06 lower than last week because we didn't have any Southern Plains trade last week. We did this week. Or we didn't have really a measurable amount of it. So when you don't see any trade down there at the lower levels, then it pulls it down because we did see Southern Plains trade a lot of cattle, especially Kansas. They sold quite a few this past week. Dress sales ranged from 274 to 278, $1 to $2 higher. Your weighted average on dressed steers 276.87. Now that was up almost $3, up $2.98 for the week because they had a comparison for last week. But in the Southern Plains, your cattle sold mostly $2 higher at 175. Northern Plains mostly $2 higher at 177, and dress sales $3 higher at 277. Friday, Iowa sold 1,300, 27,800 for the week. With sales on Friday from 174 to 177.5. Nebraska 2,200 on Friday, almost 20,000 for the week, getting up there kind of close to what they normally do. And live sales 175 to 177. Kansas sold 100 head is all on Friday. No market really there, but 14,100 for the week. That's a good movement for Kansas. Texas didn't have any sales on Friday, 6,800 for the week. Box beef cutout values, your weighted average on all of last week's choice cut sales were $4.48 higher than the previous week's weighted average at $299.81, and Friday closed above that $3 ceiling there at $300.53, and that was about 70 cents higher than what the weighted average was last week. Select sales, your weighted average on all of last week's sales, $287.84. That was up $7.36. And your Friday afternoon sales were $289.13, about $1.30 higher than the weighted average. So continuing to gain ground in our box beef cutouts, and your packers are doing well there. Now your slaughter, it ended up being very disappointing because it didn't have much of a Saturday kill. We were gaining, and then didn't have no Saturday kill, so went back about the same as the disappointing week they had the previous week because of all the blizzard shutdowns. But only 618,000 last week. They were looking for like 630 or 40, and that was just 1,000 more than the previous week with all the interruptions we had due to the weather. And then the same week a year ago, it was 653,000. So very, very disappointing there. And like I said, only had a 5,000 head slaughter on Saturday. The previous week during the blizzard, they had 34,000. That's how it got to be almost exactly the same. But talk about what else is going on. Some of you guys are just now finding this this video report. If you would like to have it texted to you, or the link to it texted to you every morning for free, just text the word FLASH to 209 Corbett or 209-267-2488, and every morning this video or the link to this video will be sent to you. We got to be paying attention here on Tuesday. Tomorrow we've got the cattle inventory report coming up. We're expecting about 2,000 less on the calf crop and the total amount of cattle there on the total inventory. Doubt we see any big shocking things out of there, but it'll just confirm what we know, that our herd continues to shrink. 2023 slaughter was down about 1 million head from just 5 years ago for last year's total slaughter on cattle. 1 million head less than just 5 years ago. And what sounds a bunch, but that was on a calf crop that was 2.7 million head smaller. So you think, well, how does that work? Well, we slaughtered more cows and more heifers. And of course they're heavier too, which starts to close that gap a little bit. But if we start rebuilding these herds, I tell you what, we're going to be out of cattle there, you would think. But they just continue to find ways to get them in here, or ways to get the beef in here. They don't really import many cattle. But check out that cattle inventory report coming out here tomorrow on Tuesday. Talk about your real-time index, your feeder cattle market. Real-time index based on an 800-pound cash auction steer up through your middle 12 states, put together by DVAuction. 235.76. That was a gain of $2.07 for last week. And you think, well, gosh, the sales were $2 to $10 higher. Well, I will tell you that gain of $2.07 was on much, much heavier receipts. So we were getting really scratching the bottom with not a lot of cattle in there, and the cattle that were in there were from the northern plains where they sell them really high. And we were able to gain a little over $2 on that, and now we've got over about 50,000 head in there. So that's pretty strong whenever you think about that for a 7-day moving average. Latest CME, like I mentioned earlier, 230.206. Talk about your cash trends. Like I said, $2 to $10 higher and sharply higher in a lot of different places, but it was just a very impressive feeder cattle market. Fort Scott Livestock Market, DVAuction broadcaster there in eastern Kansas, they sold 64 steers that weighed 900 pounds on Saturday, and they bring 230.75. Now, a week earlier, you would have had hell getting the same price for 800-pound steers. That's how big of a difference it was just in a week. We gained so much ground there. How about a big sale over the weekend or on Friday there? Fort Pierre Livestock Auction, Fort Pierre, South Dakota. They had 6,100 head. The feeder calves, and they wean the calves so big up there that there's no really chance to background and make yearlings out of them. They're already too big. But feeder calves, $6 to $10 higher there. And your lighter steers, some of them weighing, down in the fives, they did call some lower. But I thought the market was awful good there straight through at Fort Pierre, including 79 steer calves weighed 692 and bring 276. How about Crawford Livestock Market? That's my buddy Rich Robertson there, and he also shared with me that he drew up a flyer there talking about this mandatory ID stuff, and wanted to share that with his customers and the people that came to his sale. And he's in a state where Nebraska, the Nebraska Cattlemen's Association, are apparently for it. They signed on to it, the directive. And he's like, what are you guys thinking here? But he's very frustrated with things too there. But on Friday at Crawford Livestock Market, he sold 76 steers, weighed 792 at 252. How about Burwell Livestock Market? That's another DVAuction broadcaster there. 85 steer calves weighed 531 in Burwell, bring 336. Wow. But the most impressive quote that I saw anywhere late last week or over the weekend in your Macrocin, no BS, top quote for the day, come out of Magnus Livestock Auction in Huron, South Dakota. 65 steers weighed 828 at 246.50. And that's your feeder flash for Monday.